love the idea of there being different kinds of no or different reasons for a no, because that's fair for all of us, right? Like, I mean, there are times that I'm like, no, I don't want to do that because it's scary or challenging, and then there's a no because I just don't want to. I don't have the energy today. I don't have the mental bandwidth to take that on. There's a no because now is just not the right time. It's not good for it. It won't work for me right now, right? There are different reasons for no. I think that's a really good place for people to start. As you're teaching your children that, understand the difference between them. And sometimes within those, the no can hold. And sometimes within those, we can push the no. And kind of finding that balance too will be really important as you go forward, because boundaries should be for your benefit, not for a limiting thing. Hi, I'm Amber.
And I'm Elayna. We're glad you're here to join us where
everything is learning. Hey.
Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going.
It's going.
How about
Same.
you?
Same,
Yeah?
same. Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's getting cooler. It's kind of nice.
Yeah.
I like the weather.
I love that weather.
Right? Oh, it's so good. So good. So, we've been doing this whole exploring thing between exploring the relationship between mental health and learning, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And because learning's everything, and in everything is a lesson, is learning. All the things we talked about in season 1, like when you think of whatever kind of learning you're thinking about, we have to bring all those things into it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And but I don't know. I feel like we've been talking so much about learning and mental health lately in the last few conversations, mostly because that's kind of where we're living right now.
Right. That's our domain.
That's my address currently. And then because of that, we've been, let's talk about stress. And then that naturally led us to talking about just finding and maintaining balance in life, and how do we do that, and how does that change over time. And um now balance, my brain, we all know what's happening in my brain when I say the word balance, because we all know that I'm thinking in pictures over here. And so, of course, Mary Lou Retton comes to mind, right? Dominique Dawes, Carrie Strug. I know she was more on the vault with the whole ankle thing, but go with me. Just keep going with me.
Okay.
Like Simone Biles, right? So I'm thinking balance beam.
Love that. Okay.
Right? As a young girl in the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
every 4 years, man, those Olympics came on, and that was the best.
Oh yeah.
That was the
Gymnastics was my jam. That
Ugh.
and
You're gonna say figure skating in the
I
Winter
am
Olympics,
gonna say
aren't you?
figure skating. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They go
Those were my
together.
2 in the 90s.
100%.
Christy
I don't
Yamaguchi.
know.
Shout out.
Ugh, of course.
Loved her.
One of my sisters had a poster of her, I think. But
Oh,
yeah,
I definitely did.
right. So
Loved
then,
it.
of course, if I'm thinking about all these amazing athletes, these Olympians who
Mhm.
made it on this 4-inch balance beam thing. I mean, and all the other events, but again, balance beam. I started thinking about how many falls does it take to become gold medal good on the balance beam?
Love
Right?
that.
That's gonna take a lot of falls, a lot of years, a lot of falls, a lot of practice, a lot of getting back up. And then, so of course, me being who I am, I'm thinking about the learning process of this whole just live practically. How do you learn how to do the balance beam at that kind of a level? What's that whole entire progression from the time you're so many people start these things as I don't know, pretty much fetuses. And so that's a lot of years. How do you teach a fetus? No, just kidding. And I was like, well, you have to have this progression, right? You're not going to start a 2-year-old on the same balance beam that an Olympian's going to be on.
Right.
They're not ready for it yet, right? You have to have this whole progression for safety reasons. So you're developing skills over time. And when you're ready for more vulnerability, more scary things, then we put that in. But you've got those skills. You've shown you have the skills that you're ready for that, right?
Right.
And I was just like, yeah, it's for safety. Of course, you're going to do a progression of safety. You're going to have limits in place, right? Because let's be honest, gyms don't want students to get hurt.
Right.
They also really don't want to get sued.
For sure.
So they're going to have limits in place so that students can learn these very complicated, dangerous skills over time. They're there for protection, for the protection of everyone.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I was just kind of
Okay.
thinking about how like how relevant that idea of progression is and putting safety and limits. That's also crucial for us in relationships, in learning, in life. Not limits of like, I guess more like boundaries, right? Not
Yes.
limits in that I'm limiting myself or saying I can't, even though I
Do
probably could.
something.
It's just, yeah, like putting boundaries in place to protect myself, I guess, is
Right.
kind of where what I'm saying. So with all this stress and then how to have balance, balance comes with boundaries.
I love that. I'm seeing it as like balance, progression, boundaries. Like I'm seeing it as like a flow chart because you know me and
Right.
visuals too. Like
Right.
you have to have balance. Once you have balance, you can progress. And once you have progression, you can form boundaries. So like I told you the other day,
Yeah.
like I I virtually have no experience with boundaries because I didn't really have a lot of experience with the word no. I mean, I did,
Right.
but in more of like a I can't tell you no out loud, so I'm going to handle it differently.
Yep. Yep.
But my
Yeah.
no would come out in different ways. So um, I'm still really curious about them. And
Yeah.
I'm taking in this new knowledge constantly about them, whether it's, via social media, via other people who are implementing boundaries. And I'm very curious because I've found boundaries to be a confusing topic for
Mm,
people like me who have gone from being told that boundaries basically are a bad thing and saying no is a bad thing and not having a very clear understanding of that based on
mm,
what I've been taught up until really this last year.
right.
Um and even more so maybe even this year really like this year has been kind of a year of discovery with boundaries and like just being very curious about it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think boundaries. I mean, I don't. I know boundaries weren't a concept I necessarily grew up with either. Really, like, um, yeah. I think you mentioned the phrase recently. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, and
That
like,
people believe that, yeah.
right, right, right. Like just
Not
that
me.
phrase. That yeah, no, no, no. But you mentioned it and said saying that people,
Yeah,
and but I get where the person whoever said that's coming from, right? Like, it's not entirely. It's not true. You can
right,
teach an old dog new tricks, but it is harder. Like
right.
it is harder.
Because
And,
of ego.
well, I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's really
No?
just we talked last time about everything that we learn is like a wrinkle in your brain, and then I see it as over time, the more you use it, it becomes like a trench, like the Mariana Trench, right? And
Love
so
that.
we do that with behaviors too, right? So
Right.
if I'm taught or if I grow up with any idea,
Mhm.
um, there's this piece of unlearning I'm gonna have to do to shift my mindset.
Oh,
Right, so,
yeah.
like, it's not that you can't teach an old dog new tricks, it's that, the tricks that they already know are so deeply ingrained that it's just gonna take
Mm,
longer to undo that so you can learn put a new skill or new behavior in its place,
right.
and so as we get older, it is harder to learn new things. We are
Sure.
like, the brain has neuroplasticity.
Right.
You could still go
We've
take a
proved that.
class, like, yeah, we've talked about that, and you can always learn new things, but there is a piece of it that as you get older, it is a little bit harder, mostly because of that unlearning. And,
Yeah.
so
And
I
to your
think that for
point
me, there's been so much of unlearning I've had to do
mm,
to build boundaries, like, to be in this my
yes.
boundary building era, I guess, you know?
Yeah. I love that you explained it the way that you did, though, because, um, when I think of that, I think of it as somebody putting up a shield to be like, I cannot learn something new. I
Mm,
think of it first as ego, like I cannot learn something new. Um, you know, and I think it goes back to unlearning for sure.
protecting the ego.
Yes, it's protecting yourself. You feel
Mhm,
like it's a way of fortifying yourself where I think that perspective that you're bringing about learning something new, there has to be vulnerability and no ego in that. When you're learning
mhm,
something new, and it goes back to again our foundations, you need to be open.
right.
It doesn't mean you need to be vulnerable, but you do need to at least be open and accepting of the information that's coming in because
I
it
mean, I think
just
but
makes it
there is
harder.
vulnerability in that, right? Because 'Cause
Sure.
you're saying, "I'm not 100% correct." And when you
Right.
cling on to something, like, you wanna be 100% correct in it. So,
Right.
like, there is some letting go and vulnerability when you to get to that point. I
Yeah.
think. Um, but
My
it's
hus
definitely worth it because it's just about replacing, and finding. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You're just gonna say something about your
No,
husband.
no, no, I mean, I think what you're getting to it's interesting because my husband had recently taught me that boundaries are his way of saying, like, "Let's have a healthy relationship. This works for me in order
Mm-hmm.
for us to have that, and what works best for you."
Yep.
And
What works
he
best for
hasn't
you?
right, and he hasn't necessarily I thought that was really cool because I think that that's such a dynamic way of pointing it out,
Oh
and it's
yeah.
not necessarily that he was explaining to me why he has boundaries with other people in life,
Mm.
and, um, having that piece of boundaries are actually supposed to be healthy. It's for me explaining what I am in control of and, what I need, and then
Mm-hmm.
also encouraging somebody else to, like, say, "What works best for you too?" and being curious about it.
Right.
Like, it's
I mean,
boundaries aren't just for one person, it's for a relationship to build, and
right.
I had never been that's revolutionary to me. I had never
Yeah.
been taught that.
I think that's a really, really, really cool way of looking at it. Especially when you're looking at boundaries in relationships, interpersonal relationships. Because I think like boundaries you can have in so many relationships, your relationship with food, your relationship with work, your relationship with others, right? All these different pieces. You can like there are boundaries for all these different aspects of life. And all of them go back to that same idea though, like what works for you, what works for this other person, what works for, and building that piece. I love that perspective.
Yeah. I even hearing you talking about it makes me realize, like, it's really an invitation. It's an
Mm,
invitation, and I think about boundaries, like, more as seeing one another and, like, accepting yourself first and
yep.
then being able to accept other people. And
Yeah.
there's been this surge, I don't know if you've seen it with your algorithms on social media too, but
Hmm.
there's been this surge of people in our generation and the one below us and the one above us a little bit, becoming parents or releasing childhood trauma. And I
Yeah.
think boundaries have kind of become a buzzword as of late. And honestly,
Yeah.
I'm here for it because, like, I recently read someone's post. It was like, if you're offended by my boundaries, then you're probably one of the reasons I needed them in the first place. And I was
Yep.
like, yes, chef.
Hmm.
Like,
100%.
like, I mean, I think society gave us a lot of examples, particularly as women, to be like
Mm,
self-abandoning codependents. Um,
yeah.
and I think that seems to be something that's coming out a lot right now too. Like, we're taught that being a good wife or being a good child, no matter your gender or how
Yeah.
you
Being a
identify.
good blank, being a
Yeah.
good employee, you shouldn't have
Yes.
boundaries, right? Because you're supposed to
Right.
just give yourself wholeheartedly to your company or, yeah.
Right. At whatever cost. And, like,
Hmm.
being a good wife means being selfless and subservient, and that was very, like, traditional, or that we should,
Right.
like, throw ourselves in a relationship to find our worth.
Right.
Disney. And, like, I
Every
love Disney, but I'm telling
romantic
you,
comedy or romance story ever. Yeah.
yes, like, 90s Disney, like, tells you that that's what you should do. Like,
Right.
Snow White didn't have any boundaries because she
Right.
couldn't, because she
Right.
wasn't conscious. Like,
Ex-
and I'm not trying to be woke about this. I'm just trying to be real about this.
right. Right.
Like, that was made into a fantasy. You
100%.
should fantasize about somebody kissing you when you are not conscious. That is
So
not
weird.
cool. That's
That's
not
weird.
cool. And listen, I love Disney. I'm going to every Disney theme park with my kids. Like, we have Disney everything in the house, but I am not
That's
okay with
funny.
that being an example, right?
Right.
Um but I also think men, conversely, are told that they need to be independent forever and that they don't need a relationship to define themselves. Um,
Or
and I
that they
think,
shouldn't be emotional. They shouldn't tap into certain pieces of themselves or whatever.
right,
Yeah. I
right.
mean,
Like, suppress your
society tells,
emotions.
in so many groups, right? Not just men and women, but like you're saying, children, teach, like every group of people,
Right.
people who've just come over and just come to America have their society tells them sets of things, or lots. Every group has these different messages and all these different things for sure.
Yeah.
And
And
it's a lot of it that you don't matter and you just need to give and have no boundaries.
right.
Let us
And
suck you dry.
right.
Right.
And I don't know, do you remember like the do something like a girl campaign? Do you
Oh yeah,
remember
yeah, yeah.
this?
Yeah.
It was so they interviewed like teenagers and adults, and then they also did like kids under 10, and they were like,
Mm,
run like a girl,
right.
or throw like a girl. And the responses to anyone that was like a teenager older, whether you were female or male,
Mhm.
was like flail your arms and like kind of run like flailing your hands. And then when they asked younger boys and girls, it was like this fierceness and this intentionality behind their running.
Right.
And
Right.
at the end, they asked people why they felt that way.
Mm,
And the purpose was to say, when we're all younger, there's more of this equality and equity. And when we're older, we lose that somewhere along the way. And it is absolutely because of society telling us. And that's the point, is like, we are told to believe that there aren't boundaries and that children were more supposed to be seen but not heard.
mhm.
They didn't have a voice, and because of that they would communicate almost amongst themselves, and I like would build each other up. But like all these messages, like boys should be sitting and they should be quiet and girls should be
Or that's how learning happens, right? Like
right,
for academic learning to actually happen, you have to be sit still, shut up, and look forward all the time, or
right.
whatever. Yeah,
And I
whole
think
body listening.
it's
uh, can
ridiculous.
I just tell you that my leg is bouncing so that I can listen to you? Thank you
Right.
so much.
Mine's my
My
left
whole
leg right
body is
now.
working so hard to listen to you. That's what people don't understand about that phrase. Okay, sorry.
Right. Or
Yes.
like doodling. I know you
Yeah.
talk about, I love your doodles, but like
Yeah.
I it just yes. And I think the point being, we need to be teaching kids very young that their voices matter, that their no's matter, that this is what a boundary looks like, so
Right.
that they have more time by the time they get to puberty in particular, where everything falls apart because of what they're going through, because of hormones, because of society, because of what's happening just in general, and them kind of
Mhm.
getting to the point where they're um really focused on becoming more independent and more adult like, even though it's happening way too fast. But
Right.
if they're doing that, then we're preventing is the wrong word, protecting. We're doing what you talked about earlier. We're
Mm.
scaffolding almost. Like there's progress, there's progression there for them to test out what boundaries are
Mhm.
and for them to do it in a more safe environment so you don't get to be an adult and you start trying to figure it out too not too late but later, and
Right.
because of that it can implode on you, or you can listen to what society says because you're being vulnerable, and in that vulnerability you're shaking your beliefs and you're not certain. And I just feel like, first off, shout out to all the people out there who are healing from their wounds, societal, family induced, self induced, etc. Shout out to you.
Right. Right.
And shout out to
Preach.
those people who are teaching others not to follow those former societal norms, because we
Right.
need to break that cycle and we need to set these boundaries.
100%. 100%. Yeah, I mean, like as you're talking, I just can't help but go back and say, thinking I'm as you're thinking, I'm like, yes, because again, this is just a learning process, right? And all of us are different. We all have different needs. We all have different experiences. We all, and when it comes to interpersonal relationships, we all have different expectations of what that will look like, right?
Mm,
Like we have different models for relationships of all different kinds. We all had, I had a model of a parent to child relationship that would be different from the one my partner had.
right.
I had a model of my parents' romantic relationship that's different from the one my partner had, right? So when we come together, we have to talk about these things so that we know where we're each coming from, why we have these boundaries, why we put things in place, that kind of stuff. Um, and yeah, it just goes back to everybody's different. So in every piece of learning, we have to keep that in mind. Everybody has different needs, and that's going to change over time also as we evolve. And yeah, I just love the idea of visuals. Woo, here we go again. Boundaries as like a fence, and sometimes that fence has to be a 10-foot tall, barbed wire on top fence built out of cement. Sometimes that
Mhm.
boundary can be a nice little white picket fence, right? Like it just depends. Sometimes that boundary is different because we have different needs and as we're growing and changing. But to me, the fence is there to keep my things where they're supposed to be, right? So boundaries are a way of keeping our peace. So just like the fence will keep all of your sheep in the field where they're supposed to be. I don't know why my mental boundary or fence is holding sheep, but it is. Um, I think it's a British fence, apparently. But anyway, yeah, I think it's just and the more we do these things, the better we all will be, right? And I love the idea of teaching kids because less to unlearn from as they get older. If we
Yeah.
can arm people with these tools, because another thing that you were talking about was those messages we receive over time. That's again, that's learning, right? We've learned these things. No one's ever outright said, hey, actually, they may have said, "Hey, you should be subservient to be a good wife." But other things, other messages we receive, like they're not as overt, right? But
Right.
all of these things we have learned and we have internalized, we've changed our behavior as a result of. And now it's time to say, hang on, what is that about? Is that really what I believe? Is that really what works for me?
Right.
And then, unlearning and going from there. But starting young would be way nicer.
Right?
Uh,
It's one of the things that I was thinking about because I was like, "Oh, yeah, fence, fence." I had talked to Patrick about, how I felt like boundaries were like that,
mm.
and I remember him saying to me one day, um, "Boundaries aren't a fence. Boundaries are a door. You are
Oh,
invited in
yeah, through
if you
that.
can through that boundary, or you are invited to leave and to go."
Mm.
Um, and I
So it's a
it
fence, but it's a fence with a gate.
Sure, yeah, yeah, just at the gate.
Yeah.
Just at the gate.
Yeah.
But I think that that is almost even more disarming when you're sharing a boundary with someone is
Mm.
to say, "Here's the door. Like, I would love for you to be here so that we can continue to build." But the door
Right.
it swings both ways. So, um, yeah, I do wonder about that. And in terms of like boundaries for children, we're
Mm.
trying to like start teaching our children like this is
Yeah.
this is the hard one right now that we're living in is using the word no. Um
Right. Right, right, right.
because like,
It's about that
I've
time in development.
yeah, and like
Yep.
I didn't really have a relationship with the word no, and
Mm.
I felt like I needed to have an understanding or respect of what it meant. So,
Right.
we're teaching our children the various uses so that they can choose how to use no. And
Yeah.
we want them to find their voice, so we just want to give them the information and then take what they need from it and do the learning
Right.
process kind of on their own scaffolded, right? So we're like,
Right.
there's no when it comes to not wanting to do something because it's challenging. There's
Mm.
no
Yep.
because you don't want to do it or try something because we're scared or we're feeling incapable.
Right.
And then the most important no is safety, like our safety no.
Right.
Um, like there's this book series, it's called Dear and then like fill in the gender. So it's like
Mm.
dear boy, dear girl. They have like now that it's out like dear baby, dear teacher they just started doing, but it's by Paris and Jason Rosenthal. They're great. Um there's a couple of things in there where I'm like, I would word that a little differently, but for the most part they're sensational books. We give them as gifts. Like
I love it.
we really love it.
Yeah.
So, we have boy girl twins. And ironically, I'm just in awe of them all the time. So, what we do now, because of this situation with these books, in and because, I don't believe that inanimate objects are gender. Like, I don't think color has a gender. I
Right.
don't think
Right.
clothes have gender. It's all nonsense. Books don't have gender either. But this is called Dear Boy and Dear Girl. So we go to give them these books, and my daughter wants Dear Boy, and my son wants Dear Girl. And
Sure.
those are their books. So the one page that we make sure that they both quote is this premise of it says like, dear boy, yes means yes and anything else means no. So when they're in the moment and they're maybe roughhousing a little bit,
Mm.
and my son will say no, we'll say like, yes means yes and anything else means, and they'll both say no. We're like,
Right.
"Okay." So and we repeat it because, of course, children need things repeated like 2 or 3 times in order for their brains to take in the information.
Mhm.
So, getting them to prompt that, now our daughter has gotten to the point where she now, like, says it, and she'll say it
Nice.
to her brother, and she'll be like, "Dear boy, yes means yes, and anything else means no." And
That's
it's
so
just
cute.
it is cute. It's so
That's
but it's
funny.
also, like, I don't believe that pride is for me to have, in other people. Like,
Mm.
I think pride is something that is, for yourself to feel about
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
So, but it's very hard to not just look at them and just be in awe and feel like, gosh, that is so incredible that you have taken this on and you maybe don't fully know, but like you are already in a better place than mama was. And that
Right.
means so much to me that you have been able to take this on. And we just present it to you and you now understand it somewhat. And like, I just feel very lucky to have come across these books and lucky to have had encouragement from people and community and people to say this is a great way of doing this and this is a healthy way of doing this.
Yeah. I love that. I also love the idea of there being different kinds of no or different reasons for a no. 'Cause
Mm,
that's fair for all of us, right? Like, I mean, there are times that I'm like, "No, I don't wanna do that," because it's scary or challenging or whatever. And then there's a no because I just don't want to. I don't have the energy today. I don't have the mental bandwidth to take that on, right?
right.
Um, there's a no because now is just not the right time. It's not good for it. It won't work for me right now, right? There are different reasons for no, and if I think that's a really good place for people to start. As you're teaching your children that, right? Understand the difference between them. And sometimes within those, the no can hold. And sometimes within those, we can push the no. And kind of finding that
Yes.
balance too will be really important as you go forward because boundaries should be for your benefit, not for your for a limiting thing
Right,
either.
or
So
defense.
kind of yeah. So I was just thinking about as you were going through, I also love the idea of having just conversations with your child or yourself about that no and finding out the why. Why is the no, right?
Mm,
And I just saw this video, I think it was on Instagram. There's this great couple. They both have Instagram accounts. They might have TikTok and other things, but often do a lot of things together. There's a cool couple. It's his name is Dylan White and she's Suzanne White, I think.
mm.
They're so fabulous, but they were talking recently about she was talking about their 2-year-old, how she just stopped wanting baths. She's like, "Nope, I'm done. No. Hard no." Right? And they're like, "Well, that's a no that's not gonna work for us because you don't say no to jumping in the mud, and you don't say no to running around and getting sweaty and dirty, right? So, like,
Right.
we can't have a no to the bath if we're gonna say yes to the dirt, right? So, essentially, we can't give you this one." And they were trying all these things to figure out, like, how can we just get her in the bathtub? Let's
Mm.
just dress up and have fun costumes and make it entertaining enough that she'll get in. Let's find all the toys that she wants. Like, this will this toy make you get in the tub? Hard no. Then they started seeking out the why. Come to find out, she didn't want water in her eyes because that hurt her. And they're like, "Oh, yeah, well, duh. I wouldn't want that either."
Right.
Goggles. So now she takes a bath with goggles, problem solved, right? So by investigating and finding the why to her boundary, to her no, they
Mhm.
were able to kind of navigate that. What kind of no is it? And then is it fixable? Right. And kind of find a solution. Then I think I don't know. I love that. So cool. It's such a great idea of
That's so
exploring
relatable.
it. I know, right?
Oh, Renata was
Kids and
absolutely
to
that way.
yourself.
Yeah.
It's too funny.
But they were
But
also
yeah.
curious about it, which I love
Exactly,
too.
exactly. Finding out that
Yeah.
why, just going for a digger deep, and we have to do that for ourselves. Like, why is this something that I'm like, "Ah, no!" Like, why is my no screaming so loud internally?
Right.
And I think that if you're wrestling with a boundary or trying this whole idea, just start exploring no's and
Mm,
figuring out where they're coming from, why they're there, and I think that might lead you to help kind of build up a boundary. So,
yeah.
yeah,
It's interesting because I'm also, like, just sitting here thinking about first off, that little girl sounds like my spirit child. My daughter is very
that's
similar.
so funny.
But, yeah, right now my main boundary is kind of, like, protecting my energy, and it I loved that you had referenced, um, a no for rest.
Mm,
Like, I'm not worried about FOMO right now because I need rest. Like,
right.
but I am subconsciously sometimes worried about FOMO. But but protecting my energy, which feels it's really interesting too because as you explore your no, it might feel um like counter to your nature. Like
Right.
for me, protecting my energy feels contrary to my nature because I'm not
Mhm.
someone who naturally defends myself. Like
Mm,
I've always been drawn to service, so using my voice to help and defend and to advocate other people
right.
and families. But it's taken me a long time to realize like I need to do the same for myself. And because I used to think that boundaries were like this hard Berlin wall,
Mm,
th- I didn't think there was a door. And now that I'm accepting, it hasn't been easy, but now that I can clearly communicate my needs to others in a way where I don't feel like I'm betraying myself, I'm actually encouraging myself and like cheering
right.
myself on.
Right.
And building a relationship in a healthier way that makes it more long lasting. I'm realizing like if they can't respect that, this is me asking them to participate in my
Right.
life.
Right.
But if they can't, that's okay. And that's also their response. And the
Right.
door, goes both ways. So I'm starting to implement that and understand myself better. But it is a process. It's been a process. And I think that that's something that we, even if we're not there yet, even if the
Mhm.
boundary isn't like set in stone,
Right.
if you're there and you're starting to etch it, like keep on keeping on.
Right. Yeah, I listen, protecting energy, protecting your peace, like those kind of boundaries for me are life-saving endeavors. Like
Mm,
that's just cuz I will keep going. I will energizer bunny it
yeah.
and eventually, do you remember the Energizer Bunny, how it used to, like, waddle on the table, like, as their commercial, and then it would eventually fall off the table?
Yeah.
Same, you know what I mean? So,
Ah!
right, like
Yes.
and that's why again, boundaries are not just for interpersonal relationships, although they are, that is a piece of that, like, we have to use boundaries there. We're using
Mm,
them in everything, that work-life balance that we've talked about, managing stress, for children, for students, thinking about where all of their energy and effort goes. As
mm,
just kind of being compassionate about where everyone's at in their life and that everyone's going through stuff. And then, you know, like for me, I think one thing is exploring a no, but also thinking about just what is truly important. What is important to me,
mm,
for me, what's important to me and to everyone that I have interpersonal have these relationships with, what's important for my children, what's important for my employees if I'm if I'm a boss or whatever. And thinking of those, like what's truly important, that should guide our boundaries. And I was thinking
mm.
about how you recently were talking about Missy, a former boss of ours, and how she helped you implement a boundary
Right,
because like she was like, hang on, I know what's best for my employees and this is not it. And let me
right.
help her out. So like again, community and building all that. I think narrowing things down into like guiding principles for your life. What are the things that are really important to me? And then how can I filter everything through that? And it becomes the map that you use to navigate life and to kind of let you know where these boundaries need to go, or what how you want your life to be
Yeah.
guided through that.
Yeah. No, I
It's neat.
I found a
You were
lot of
talking
peace.
earlier too about like the whole fence thing
Mm.
and and algorithms on social media, which now that I think about it, back to social media. Please go look up Dr. Raquel Martin.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
definitely on TikTok. She's on Instagram. I love everything she does and puts out. I love, love, love her work on boundaries and
Mhm.
rules. And so she does this really great job explaining the difference. And she says that boundaries are there to dictate our response to a situation. They're
Yes.
not there to govern the acts of other people.
Mm.
When you start trying to control other people, now you're stepping into the rule category. So
Yes.
with that gate, with that fence, you're the gatekeeper.
Mhm.
You're the one saying, "Yes, I'm going to welcome you in," or like, "No, the gate is shut right now." And it's not about controlling other people. Like, it's not about manipulating other people. It's about putting things in place for yourself and just controlling your behavior and not that kind of thing. You're just controlling your environment, your actions, what you can do. Um, and that's not manipulation. But like you said earlier, if someone feels manipulated by that,
Mhm.
then it's probably because they're trying to manipulate you beyond your boundary. So,
Correct.
and part of that is probably that we're all used to being manipulated out of our boundaries and out of our comfort zones. Because
Yes.
that's where this all started, is the fact that that's kind of a societal norm.
Right. To
So
defend
yeah,
I feel like that's so interesting. I feel like because of societal norms, people in the past, like older, significantly older than us, because they were the children who were seen and not heard. I think that it has been hard for them to find peace in setting a boundary.
right.
Um, because society told them, like, well, if you don't want to listen, better get good on defending yourself. And
Mm,
I just feel like there can be such walls and defense when you're put in those positions and you're given false narratives or false hope, or um put in positions to defend yourself. And in all honesty, I have found a great deal of peace in not defending myself against others' false narratives anymore.
yeah,
Whether it's about me or other
there's no
people
point.
coming to me and saying, like, this is what I was told by fill in the blank, my
So and
boss,
so,
my
yeah,
teacher, my friend. Like, if someone doesn't truly care to know you,
right,
their opinion should hold no power over you,
right.
or your children or your partner or your life or anything. And that is not easy. It is easy to say, but having been in those positions, it is not easy when somebody tells you what they think about you and you have to decide in a split second to respond. And in all honesty, if I look back, I haven't responded the way that I wish that I had. In
Mm,
even when I'm in a healed place, in a peaceful place, I
yeah,
don't always think to defend myself immediately. I think to, like, implement again, it goes to that biological response for me sometimes,
right.
where maybe it sounds like defense, but really, like, I'm just in a place where I haven't gotten to the point where I automatically say, like, "You know what? That you're very wrong about that situation.
Mm,
I understand and I respect what you're saying in the sense that you really believe that, but that's just a false narrative." But I don't think we're taught to feel that way.
right,
And I think having kids has made this even more of a practice that I need to do, because self care isn't just about me anymore. It's
right.
something that I'm modeling for people who I'm not even saying look up to me. I hope someday maybe, but like they're looking to me. I am around these people. That's why there was so much pressure sometimes in education. I felt like to be in the classroom and to show them, like, there were days where I didn't have 100% to give. And if I came into the classroom and I said to them, look, I love you guys, this is what our goal is for the today, I'm just not 100% feeling myself, can anybody else relate? It created a bond and it created a
Yep,
community. And that's what
yep,
I'm doing right now. Like, I need to model this because I want
yeah.
to be my best version of myself, and I want to do that every day. But it doesn't mean that some days I'm gonna always be able to give 100%.
Right. And that's, yeah, I think, again, like we're saying, everything is going to be in flux and change over time, especially boundaries, especially what you need by minute, can change day to day, minute by minute, hour by hour, right? Like and just being aware of it and owning it. Like it's totally fine. It's totally fine.
Right.
We love giving permission around here. So we'll give you permission to say no. We'll give you permission to say I'm not ready right now. Whatever it is. I'm all about that.
Yeah. I'm realizing too that like vulnerability and revisiting your values are really crucial for setting boundaries.
Yeah.
And I think they need to be personalized to you and
Yep.
also personalized to your situation because
Exactly.
it's been painful, but like as someone who believes in giving everyone a seat at the table with a few exceptions, like my values are very deeply connected to my boundaries.
Yes.
And I also believe that we're all works in progress forever for life, especially me. And it can be hard to find the right balance sometimes when you feel like everyone deserves, not deserves, but everyone is invited. It's just, again, like that door, it swings both ways. So it's hard
Right.
sometimes to find that balance.
Yeah. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Life and learning are full of challenges,
Hmm.
full of what is this? Where am I? What's happening? And, learning, accepting, supporting yourself and then others, that's
Mm.
paramount to navigating all of those challenges. And if we, going back to our conversation about stress, and I talked about getting stronger, like building muscle, like physically, mentally, emotionally, as you're getting stronger, it
Hmm.
requires periods of challenge right alongside those periods of recovery.
Right.
And boundaries are just a form of self care. Like this is just a way that we are taking care of ourselves in the midst of everything, you know?
Love that. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Sounds good.
Yeah. That's that's good stuff.
Good stuff. All right. Well, I'll catch you next time.
All right. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Everything is Learning.
We'll catch you next time.